Hi everybody. Today we are looking how to get items into our inventory. As an example, we used some Dungeons and Dragons. That of course is a license from Wizard of the Coast under Creative Commons. I start as usual with a Google Sheet, and here in the Google Sheet I imported a lot of equipment from Dungeons and Dragons 5.1 under the Creative Commons, and that is based on the system reference document that they made publicly available. The document itself is a PDF, so not really easy to work with, and for that we use one of the GitHub repositories, the 5e database, and that is a very nice application that also converted all the information into readable JSONs. That makes it easy for us to just ingest the JSON into the Google Sheet and go from there. So what we do here from the equipment table, we use all the equipment, and that results in a sheet like that. And from the equipment then we just select the 30 or so weapons that are predefined and will ingest them into our inventory using the damage and whatever modifiers that we have here. The resulting extract table looks like this here. We have 34 or so weapons. We have them with different properties. We have always a base GUID as always. Every item template has this base GUID. Every item instance gets an instance GUID. This is a location string simply because I want to have a translated localized name at one point that refers to an entry in a string table. We have normally two string tables here, German and English. And if you look at the tables, you will see a lot of entries, and that exactly this name responds here and the key responds to this, so that we can link the name of the weapon to one of the entries here. You see, I just inserted these 34 or so weapons with German and English translation. And that makes it easy to directly ingest a pointer to this into the data table. Then we need a couple of enums like range type, for example. We have two range types. That is, one is the melee, one is the range. So yeah, let's differentiate between that and use an enum for that. And the other thing that was there, that was the damage type down here, like piercing and slashing and whatever. So we looked at all the damage types that are available in D&D and also put them into an enum and will point to that enum. The rest of the information is mostly a couple of floats like min, max damage, some booleans. Is it two-hand, or can it be thrown or shoot, or does it use ammunition? So now we have to really create a struct that is a one-to-one reflection of the data table, meaning every name of each property in the struct should be exactly the name as it is in the column name, and the resulting order of the columns should also be the same to be really sure that you have the same information. Enums will be matched on the name, so the name needs to be exactly the same as it is in the enum. But it will give you a warning. If it fails at one point, then you can really correct. Needs normally a couple of tries. So now we have our struct, our weapon struct. That is a reflection of the data table that we will ingest. And now we can build our data table. Data table is always pointed to a struct and will return a struct if you query the data table. So it looks good. We have a one-to-one copy. And now we want to export the information from here. So we say download as CSV, comma separated value, and the resulting text file is this one. One thing we have to do, the 3 apostrophes here, we have to convert into 1. So search, replace it, and just have 1, otherwise the import will fail. We copy it, and then we actually passed it into a CSV that I exported from the data table, saving it and re-import it into the table. To get that CSV, just manually add one entry and export. So looking at the data table, we use our struct. We have some CSV path, and if I click re-import, it will read the new CSV, and here successfully re-imported. All the values are there. If I need anything else, I just edit it in my Google Sheet and re-import again. That takes a minute, and then we have it updated. So what else do we need? Here under game items, we already have the elements. I did a video about that. That was these periodic systems of elements. Now we go for the weapons. The one thing, the data table, our source, that is what we created. Then we have these two enums that I showed. That was the range type and the damage type. The fragments we will do later, and then the struct that we created, a one-to-one reflection of the data sheet that we have in the Google Sheet. Now coming to the fragments. Fragments are actually objects that has properties. It's a way to kind of give your item a collection of different fragments. Some are kind of mandatory, like naming or so, or grade. Others are dependent. So here in my case, for example, all these fragments are based on this base fragment. Grade and identification and visuals, these are mandatory. But for the elements, we need a reagent fragment. And here for the weapons, I need my weapons fragment. And the weapons fragment is, as I said, just an object with a lot of properties according to the struct, to the information that I need, that is not yet in the collection of fragments. Here at the moment, it's really just the properties, but I could also add routines like calculating some damage from min-max or something like that. But it should stay simple. It should be as a very small object. Then we need a data provider. Data provider, again, is an object, but an object that is implementing a certain interface, the item provider interface, with exactly one function, get items. So what I have a list of objects at one point, all implementing this routine, this interface, and can deliver items. How they do it is quite simple, straightforward. It's standard access to a data table. In our case here, we have the weapon data table that is read. We get the data from the weapon data table. That's here, stored here. Then we go through it row by row, create out of it an BP item, because we always get a struct. So the BP item is our base item for everything that will host the collection of fragments. Let me repair something. It should go to setting the item, and from the item it should then create things like setting the value, setting the properties, like this, and then go there. And then when we created the BP item, when we updated all the properties, then we would add it here to a temporary map, and at the end of the routine we will return the map of items to be added then to the central repository in the inventory manager. So how to go from the struct into this BP item? This is the struct that is typical for a weapon, and these are very different information. A couple of them we already have fragments for, like the grade or the name or the GeoID, the weight. But here we have to add a new fragment, the weapon fragment that we showed, to really integrate all the information that are only weapon typical. Yeah? So every BP item is a mixture of fragments that are already always there. They are mandatory, like a name, for example, and then item-specific fragments, weapons in our case. Opening the BP item, that's exactly this one here, will show you different routines, like initialization of the BP item from an element array, initialization of the BP item from a weapon array, weapon struct, sorry, and so on and so on. It also has a routine for getting all these fragments, and also an indicator is if a fragment is actually available. Because a reagent, for example, would have a visual fragment, but not a weapon fragment, because it's an element. Yeah. Same thing is here. We have a couple of mandatory ones for a weapon, but we don't have a reagent one that will be empty, but we have a weapon one. So the more items you add to your system, the more fragments you will get here potentially, and some of them will be empty, some of them will be filled, and you have an indicator showing which one are actually filled and which not. We could, of course, just use the base fragment and have a map and casting, but I want to avoid casting as much as possible. You should never cast in your code, honestly. So it's, for me, we kind of swallow the kind of inelegant approach here, having all the fragments defined and the need, of course, to update your BP item the moment you add a new fragment so that it's there. But you have to update it anyway because you need a routine to initialize it from a new struct to get all the properties in there. So now we have really the indicator has fragment weapon. We can return the fragment weapon and we can access all the new properties that are coming with the fragment weapon. So these are the booleans, these are the fragment list, and for each new fragment you would just add a fragment, a boolean, and these two routines, and then we can use it. Now, we have our data table, we have an ingest way, how to actually trigger that. Here in the BA InventoryManager, in the play event, start playing, begin play, you have this get items. And the items is doing nothing else than going through an array of different data providers. These are just objects, but objects that implement this item provider interface with the one routine get items. So it goes through it, it really checks again if it does implement the interface. Normally it should be yes. Then it calls the get items routine on that interface, because every one of these objects has it. It will get a list of or a map of the BP items, with the key being the base UID and the value being the BP item, and it adds it to the central list to be added. That's exactly what happens here. Now we have a list, I think it was 99 elements. Now we have 35 or something, 34 new weapons coming from Dungeons and Dragons. And if I now get myself a couple of belt pouches and run here over my random collection, you see, yeah, I get a wide collection of elements and daggers and light hammers and short swords. So meaning, yeah, seems to work. So thank you very much. That is quick and dirty how we ingest items, and we go from there. Thank you much.